Live from Detroit, this is NBC News with Jake Jacobson and Josh Feathers, the dream team of news.
Good evening, America. I'm Jake Jacobson.
And I'm Josh Feathers. Here's tonight's top story.
A young black man made a decision under the influence of his cousins that cost him his life. This may be a common incident, but this time it caught the media's attention.
A young man named Emmett Till was visiting his relatives in Money, Mississippi. He's originally from Chicago, so he wasn't aware of the prejudices of the South. Emmett and his cousins were gathered around Bryant's Market, owned by the locally renowned Carolyn Bryant and her husband.
Carolyn Bryant had won a couple of local beauty contests. All of the boys who lived in Mississippi knew the risks of making conversations with her, or even looking her in the eye. To a young boy, asking her on a date would be unspeakable.
Emmett was dared by his cousins to ask the white woman on a date. Emmett's cousins should not have encouraged him to ask her on a date. They should have warned him about the prejudices of the South and told him not to even think about speaking to a white woman.
Emmett walked into the store to buy some candy, while all of his cousins were crowded around the storefront windows. When Emmett went to the counter to buy the candy, he said to Mrs. Bryant, "How about a date, baby?" Nobody actually knows what happened between Emmett and Mrs. Bryant, but Mrs. Bryant was angered when she was asked on a date by a Negro.
Here is a reenactment of what may have happened that morning. Come on, Emmett.
Let's go, Emmett.
Come on, Emmett. You can do it. Run, Emmett! Run, Emmett! Run! Emmett didn't realize the seriousness of the South. He underestimated the racism and hate towards African Americans in the South, and should have been more cautious in an environment he wasn't aware of.
Carolyn Bryant's husband, Roy Bryant, was on a trip to Texas when Emmett had angered Mrs. Bryant. When Mr. Bryant found out what had happened, he wanted Emmett to be punished.
Roy Bryant had found out where Emmett was living. Mr. Bryant and his brother, J.W. Millam, were going to teach Emmett a lesson.
When they had arrived at Emmett's house, they took Emmett and drove off to a plantation that was owned by one of the Millam brothers. This was the last time Mose and Elizabeth Wright saw Emmett Till alive.
This is another reenactment of what may have happened.
Alright, wake up, boy.
Come on, Emmett!
Let's go. Is this the one?
Yes.
Alright. When they got to the plantation, they took Emmett to a shed. Willie Reed, the son of the sharecropper, claims to have heard screaming and crying. He also saw Millam carrying a gun.
Apparently, they took Emmett and dumped him into the Tallahatchie River. When Mose Wright heard of what had happened, he was too afraid for his family's lives to tell the police, but Curtis Jones knew he had to.
A day after Curtis told the sheriff, Bryant and Millam were arrested. 3 days after the arrest, Emmett's body was found in the Tallahatchie River.
The sheriff retrieved the body and wanted to bury it as soon as possible. Even with the deep prejudices of the South, he ran the investigation without bias. I'm shocked at how he handled the case. I think that he will continue to handle the case in the same way.
We were lucky enough to get an interview with Mose Wright, Emmett's uncle.
Hello, Mr. Wright. I know this is an emotional topic, but I would like to ask you a few questions about Emmett. First of all, did you know about Emmett and his friends leaving the sermon?
No, but I could have guessed they might.
When did you first find out that Emmett was in danger?
Well, the boys obviously tried to keep what they did a secret from me for as long as they could. But I knew he was in danger as soon as Mr. Bryant and the other men came to the door. When they took him, that was the last time I saw Emmett alive.
What would you have done differently to protect Emmett?
First thing I ought to have done was to talk to him about how he wasn't in the North anymore. I would have warned him about how anything could and would be taken the wrong way.
Thank you for your time.
Emmett's mother insisted on having the casket sent to Chicago so she could know it was Emmett. When Emmett's mother saw her son's body, she was devastated. When she decided to have an open casket funeral, the nation was perplexed.
When the nation saw Emmett's body, they were made to realize through their own eyes the reality of what had happened.
Here's an issue of Jet, a weekly national news magazine for blacks.
Emmett, although he had to die for it to happen, started the civil rights movement.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
This has been NBC News. Thanks for watching.
Brought to you by NBC, National Bread Consumers.
Are you ready, kids? Now slap your hands. Now spread those wings.